So President Trump lashed out at director Spike Lee on Twitter, seemingly reacting to Lee's acceptance speech for the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. Here's what he said. He said, "Be nice if Spike Lee could read his notes, or better yet, not have to use notes at all when doing his racist hit on your president, who has done more for African Americans, criminal justice reform, lowest unemployment numbers in history, tax cuts, etc., than almost any other prez." Except Spike Lee didn't say anything racist. He said this.
The 2020 presidential election is around the corner. Let's all mobilize. Let's all be on the right side of history. Make the moral choice between love versus hate. Let's do the right thing. You know I had to get that in there.
So that's not a racist attack on the president. All Spike said was that there is a choice in the 2020 election, and that choice is between love and hate. If the president sees that as racist, as a racist hit, despite it not being one, well, what does that say about him? After all, President Trump is the one who said this about Nazis marching in Charlottesville.
You also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did.
And he said this about peaceful protests by black NFL players.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, "Get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired."
Are you feeling the love? And we have talked many times on this show about the president's notion that he's done more for African Americans than any other president. A good economy or new prison and sentencing reform laws will not solve all of the problems that people of color face across our country today. Those aren't fixes to the systematic racism that has embedded itself in generations of American life. Maybe if President Trump watched Spike Lee's movie Black Klansman, he'd get a glimpse of what has happened in this country. The movie tells the true story of Ron Stallworth, the first African-American detective in Colorado Springs, in the Colorado Springs Police Force in the 1970s. It chronicles how Stallworth managed to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. And it ends with the images of Nazis marching in Charlottesville in 2017, and Trump's statement about how there were very fine people on both sides. The now Oscar-winning movie ends with a reminder that racism in our country is still real, and that the KKK and that hate comes with it has festered for way too long. The movie could actually be a reminder to this president, a reminder that hate exists. Remember, on the campaign trail in 2016, Trump was asked if he condemned the former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke and other white supremacists. This is what he said.
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, you know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
I wonder what he has learned since then. Let's discuss now. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is here. We're so glad to have him, and Kierna Mayo as well. Thank you both for joining us. This is an important topic to discuss here. Lots that I want to talk to you about, Kareem. Let's start with this. The president thinks that Spike Lee's call for love over hate was a racist attack on him. What would make him think that?
I think he sees enemies everywhere he looks, so he probably is trying to make a case for that being an attack on him. I think Spike is trying to get people out to vote and to express whatever it is that they feel is their political statement.
Mm-hmm. Kierna, Spike was pretty reserved for what he said. I mean, coming from Spike Lee, he could have gone much harder.
That was my first thought. I was like, wow, Spike's tucking it in. You know,
right.
You're used to Spike really kind of coming at you a little more clearly than that even. Look, this is a president who knows he's on the wrong side of history. So you've hit the dog. In other words, he's barking because he knows that he exemplifies all that Spike and his courageous film are really standing against. And that David Duke actually makes a cameo in Spike's film if the president needs to make himself familiar with whom David Duke
Well,
is.
but David Duke also, there is also him talking about David Duke in an interview, way prior.
Of course,
to that
I'm being
interview and for
facetious.
the
He
2016
absolutely
election.
knows who David Duke is, and he did before that moment.
So during the campaign, Kareem, Trump used to ask black voters, remember, what do you have to lose? Does he understand that his policies and the economy hasn't solved racism?
Well, I think I think what he's reacting to is the fact that his own history with regard to renting rental units in Queens, where they refuse to rent to black applicants, I think that's something that he knows is a shadow on anything that he has to say. And he and his dad paid fines, without admitting any guilt. They paid fines and were told to rectify the situation. It's things like that that really give the lie to so many of the things that he has to say.
Yeah. Do you think he believes that? Do you
What's
believe
that?
that he's somehow solved racism and this is the best time ever for African Americans, and he doesn't see how
I do.
how the economy has only improved about 2 points
I
when it
don't
comes to
even think
unemployment for
he
black?
really, this may be out there, but I don't really think that the president sees black people as fully human. I don't think he sees us as having agency, intelligence, as noted by his comment about Spike. He wishes he could read. There's always some subtle suggestion that black people need to catch up, keep up, and if it were not for his graciousness, if it were not for his attentiveness, his loving kindness, we would be in a hell of a place. But clearly, most African Americans, I think, are offended by most of the president's language, by most of his conversation, and certainly by the thing every night, every clip just leaves most African Americans feeling, this is a person who actively hates me. This is a person who hates people who look like me. And despite these individual one-off wins, I think we're clear that the legacy of Donald Trump and the future of Donald Trump is one and the same. He is racist.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Kareem, because people look to you for this as a figure of authority and power in this country, someone who knows the history of this country. This is a big ask. If you could offer this president some advice, what would you say to him, especially in regards to all that he has said, what he believes about this, and Spike Lee?
I don't think it's appropriate to ask the president for anything because he has his mind set on what he wants to do, and that seems to be what we're going to get from him. His agenda, and if we're not with that, I think we'll be ignored. That seems to be the process so far. I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah. Listen, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about an op-ed that you wrote and other things. So stick with me, both of you. We've got to talk about
Sure thing.
About Green Book's controversial win at the Oscars and why people are divided about whether it was real enough. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has written a great piece on that, and we're going to talk about that next.